I started collecting omnibus over 10 years ago, and the Age of Apocalypse and the Companion were some of the first omnibus that I bought and read. I remember going on vacation and taking the Companion with me and reading it while in the hotel room. Years later, I would pick up the X-Men Avengers Onslaught Omnibus. I read this and did a review on the channel, and here today we have an omnibus that bridges the gap between them both. The Road to Onslaught Volume 1 from Marvel Comics. Is this worth the read? Is this worth picking up? That's what we're going to figure out today. We're going to take a look at the story, which I just got done reading from front to back. I was flipping through it as I got an early copy, and I just read the whole thing, and we're going to talk about it today. Stick around until after the overhead shots, and I'll give you my final thoughts on this omnibus. This is the direct market variant. It's by Andy Kubert. What's cool about this cover is that it's actually a longer poster. As you can see here from X-Men 45. This is the regular cover, Joe Mad cover, so pretty cool how they took these two posters and turned them into the main image for the dust jackets. All right, moving on to the spine here, we have X-Men Road to Onslaught Volume 1. And then here is the back telling us what's going on. Reality has been restored. This is post Age of Apocalypse. This book and these issues act as a bridge, a road to, for lack of a better term, but it's what goes on between Age of Apocalypse and Onslaught. They return to a world that still hates and fears them. There is this new threat lurking in the shadows, which is Onslaught. We get the issue that's referenced in the Onslaught Omnibus where Juggernaut gets hurled across country and he can't believe it. And it collects X-Men Prime #1, Uncanny X-Men 322 through 328. You have the annual from 1995. You have X-Men 42 through 47 with X-Men Annual 95. X-Men Unlimited 8 and 9, which are super long issues. The Sabertooth Special, that whole Code Red Chromium cover. And then you get the Wolverine Gambit Victims 1 through 4 by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale, which is collected in the Wolverine Omnibus Volume 5. And the Starjammers 4-issue miniseries, which I feel like is collected somewhere else. But I did a quick check and I couldn't find any other omnibus it was in. But that's the Warren Ellis Starjammers miniseries. This retails $125, but as always, don't pay cover price for these things. This book is scheduled to come out next week, January 15th, and you can check it out on organicpricebooks.com, who will have it discounted. You can also use my promo code GemMint to save an additional $2. And if you're overseas, you can check out comicsbugle.com. They also have these in-stock books, well discounted, with great packaging, free shipping without any taxes or import fees if you're within the EU. And you can save $5 off your first order by using code GEMMINT at checkout. All right, so inside of the dust jacket here, you can see that the art does kind of wrap around a little bit, so that's pretty cool. We might as well unfold this whole thing. All right, so in the shadow of Onslaught. So it talks about how we just averted the Age of Apocalypse, but that doesn't mean the problems are over. So Gambit is in a coma after sharing a kiss with Rogue, and Rogue is traumatized by what she saw in Gambit's head. So we'll see a lot of that in the beginning of this omnibus. She's out with Iceman, just kind of on a road trip trying to clear her head. Wolverine sleeping outside of the mansion. He's losing his grip with humanity. He has no adamantium. He's got bone claws. He's in his feral mode. Bishop is tweaking out a little bit because he has all these memories from a future that no longer exists or won't exist. And they're also learning about this legacy virus, this virus that kills mutants, but now has seemingly infected their first human, Moira McTaggart. This is what's causing a lot of that anti-mutant sentiment throughout humanity. We get introduced to the Gene Nation, which is led by the Morlock named Marrow. You have Magneto's acolytes. They battle Holocaust, which is one of the only survivors from the Age of Apocalypse. It's Apocalypse's son. We get a little Magneto story. He's lost his memory. He's been de-aged. He goes by Joseph. That's only really in like one issue, if I recall. The X-Babies, I thought I was going to hate the X-Babies, was actually a really powerful couple of issues. And then we have this Starjammers. I don't know why the Warren Ellis Starjammers miniseries was collected in here. And they credit Warren Ellis here too, but I think that's the only thing he contributed to on this book. A lot of Scott Lobdell writing, Jeff Loeb with Tim Sale, like I said, Fabian Nicieza, Andy Kubert, Joe Mad, Carlos Pacheco. Beautiful wraparound cover. I want to say this is from the X-Men Unlimited issue 8 double page spread. So we'll take a look at that when we get there, but they removed all of the panels and the dialogue to just get the art. Very dope artwork on the hardcover itself. Opens up to some white cover pages. I'm not a fan of the white cover pages, man. I keep seeing them lately. I don't know, it just feels a little bit cheap to me. I don't like it. All right, so then here's Bishop and Gambit. So this is from the X-Babies issue. Hard-hitting issue, man. I even shared a picture on my Instagram story because it was one of those panels that I read it and I was like, whoa. All right, so some credits. Wolverine, Bone Claws. You got Beast here. Got a lot of great Beast stuff in this omnibus. All of the writers, all the pencilers, Brian Hitch, Gary Frank. Great contributors here. Al Milgrom on some inks. Then we get X-Men Prime. So if you remember X-Men Alpha, X-Men Omega, they were those wraparound chromium covers. That's kind of like the bookends to the Age of Apocalypse. X-Men Prime is that same thing. It's a wraparound cover. It was chromed out. And X-Men Prime is kind of like reshuffling the deck. Like, where are all the X-Men at post Age of Apocalypse? So it kind of checks in on everybody. And these issues of X-Men and Uncanny X-Men follow those characters and their storylines. So it opens up. You got Jean Grey with Wolverine. So like I mentioned earlier, like Wolverine is in this feral state. He's sleeping outside of the mansion. He's not really blending well with humanity. Bishop is going through it, talking with Xavier, trying to get through these issues and these memories that he's having, checking in on Beast and Cyclops. This shows Rogue and Iceman. She's traumatized as well from siphoning Gambit's powers via that kiss, so she's out on this kind of road trip trying to, I don't know, really figure things out. Here's the stuff about the legacy virus, working all the humans up, getting them worried about mutants. So I guess this is where the Starjammer stuff comes from, because it does touch on it briefly in this Prime issue with the whole Shi'ar and Corsair. All right, then Uncanny X-Men 322, Scott Lobdell's story with Tom Grummett pencils. Like, man, what hurled Juggernaut across the country? Who could possibly do that? Checking in on Archangel. Here we have the shot, the first kind of reference to Onslaught. So that's basically what this issue is, just establishing this threat that's going to be coming, something powerful enough to knock Juggernaut off of his feet. The next book that you read is X-Men 42, Andy Kubert cover, beautiful artwork. Now we're checking in on another squad of the X-Men. This is Fabian Nicieza writing it. Paul Smith is the penciler. And it'll kind of go back and forth between characters. So even in this title, we flash back to the X-Men trying to figure out what happened with Juggernaut. And then we get into the whole Rogue Gambit stuff. So you can see Rogue when she siphoned his powers and she starts seeing his demons. Then here we go, X-Men 43. We check in on Colossus with Magneto. Colossus also having a hard time adjusting to the world, coming back from this whole Age of Apocalypse episode. So this one's Fabian Nicieza with Matt Ryan. X-Men 44, Fabian Nicieza is joined by Andy Kubert, so we get him as the penciler, Matt Ryan on the inks. Continuing the Colossus story. Colossus runs into the old leader of the Morlocks, Callisto. And then again, back and forth between X-Men and Uncanny X-Men. Here is the Rogue Iceman story. Scott Lobdell with Brian Hitch. Brian Hitch artwork, y'all. Early Brian Hitch, mid-90s X-Men. So while Rogue is with Iceman on the road, you have Psylocke with Archangel training in the Danger Room. They have custody of Sabertooth. So in the events of Wolverine's ongoing series, issue 90, Wolverine stabs Sabertooth in the brain, making him like 100% feral. Like, he's no longer Victor Creed, he's just Sabertooth, and they're trying to rehabilitate him, really. So you have this kind of dog-like version of Sabertooth. This is where we get introduced to that whole Gene Nation story before going into Uncanny 324. So a Psylocke issue, here's her as Elizabeth Braddock in her early kind of Jim Lee first costume. He goes, again, Wolverine feral with the bone claws. But I am a big fan of the mid-90s, big full page, a lot of kinetic artwork, a lot of energy. Look at this. Then the X-Men 95 annual. We got the Sinister story. JMD Mateus with Ralph Macchio story, Terry Dodson and John Paul Leon on the pencils, John Haldridge and Sean Martinborough on the inks. There was a lot of great Beast stuff here. Like, if you're a fan of Beast, these are some great X-Men issues that show him doing an array of things, not just sitting around in a laboratory, although he does do that as well. It's just a backstory that really shows the cold-hearted nature of Sinister. The second story within this annual by Scott Lobdell and Matt Idelson. Ramon Bernardo is the penciler. P. Craig Russell's the inker. So this is a letter from Psylocke to her brother, Captain Britain. This was cool stuff. This was Psylocke and Archangel kind of blossoming relationship. It made me think of Uncanny X-Force. I mean, obviously this came first, but pretty cool Psylocke Archangel interaction. Then we have Milestone issues, the Uncanny X-Men 325. Again, this is the Joe Mad cover that's used for the regular dust jacket of this omnibus. Here it is spread out horizontally. Scott Lobdell, Joe Mad doing the interiors as well. So it's a 20-year anniversary and a Milestone issue to boot. So I like how opening up with the fun and games, X-Men playing baseball. You gotta love that mid-90s Joe Mad art. Flashing over to Gambit. So we'll end up getting a lot of Gambit in this omnibus as well. Gambit finally speaks to Rogue while she's out on the road with Iceman. So you know the Rogue Gambit story. They're in love. They can never touch. They share a kiss at the end of Age of Apocalypse. Messes Rogue up. More of this Gene Nation stuff. Dope Wolverine panel right here, though, right? The bone claws with the feral Wolvie. Storm, always messing with the Morlocks. We know she was the leader at one point. Fastball special, Colossus and Wolvie. Colossus is having a hard time with things here, so he kind of goes solo a little bit. Here goes X-Men 45, and again, this is the cover for this dust jacket, just folded out as a poster. Opening up with Rogue, Fabian Nicieza once again with Andy Kubert, Cam Smith is the inker. The Rogue and Iceman stuff was cool. It's cool to see the X-Men team kind of split up in these different factions and their interactions with each other. They're on the road, but Rogue doesn't want to use powers. They break down in the car. They have to walk. They go to a bar. Obviously, everybody's flirting with Rogue, but Iceman's got her back. Great artwork. Nice interaction between characters that we know and love. It's not the 90s unless they do these vertical double-page spreads. The Gambit stuff was dope, though. So Gambit's kind of just a few steps behind Rogue, trying to track her down, trying to talk things out, and here we go. Yeah, see, great issue with Rogue and Gambit. All right, after that, we're back to Uncanny with issue 326. So some of the Sabertooth stuff, which actually leads into that Sabertooth one-shot that I mentioned earlier. But here, look, speaking in public, Beast about the legacy virus. Flashing back to Sabertooth. The X-Men have been nursing him and trying to rehabilitate him. Gambit's not buying it. And then we get the 4-issue victim story, the Jeff Loeb, Tim Sale, Wolverine Gambit. I definitely enjoyed reading this. I'm a big fan of Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale. This definitely feels like earlier works from theirs. There's been 5 murders, and it's kind of like a copycat of Jack the Ripper. So Gambit is investigating these murders because he knows one of the women and had a personal connection with them. So he goes there, and it seems like these victims have all been killed at the hands of Wolverine. So that's what this 4-issue miniseries is. Wolverine doesn't remember any of it. Of course, he's been not himself lately, so he kind of doesn't know if he's done it or not. But that's what this whole miniseries is, and like the art, the paneling, it's just on a different level when you're dealing with Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale. So kind of a little murder mystery. It references the current main storyline as well, so I can see why it's included in here and why it ties in. But it also works as a standalone. This was actually one of the dust jackets for the Wolverine Omnibus Volume 5, but great art, great little side story, still kind of connects with everything. Not so sure I can say the same for the Starjammers, but we'll talk about that when we get there. All right, then to X-Men Unlimited. I don't know what it is. These issues were super long. So this is written by Howard Mackey, pencils by Dan Laws and Tom Grummett. Matt Webb's the colorist. So this was... I'm not sure why this was included. I don't remember if it ties in later, but it's just the story of this kid who becomes a mutant. His powers start to manifest. So Gambit and Jean Grey do what the X-Men do. They find these, young teens that their powers are manifesting, and they come try to recruit them to the school for higher learning, is what it's called in this era. Again, we don't really get a lot of payoff for this, though. I think it's more so of the legacy virus that this mutant contracts. So it's kind of like showing these new mutants have the potential to manifest powers and be struck in with the legacy virus, which can kill them and potentially be transferred to humans. Yeah, so here's that double-page spread. Dan Laws and Tom Grummett. So this is what they used for the hardcover. I thought it was great how they were able to remove all of the dialogue. All right, but yeah, so just a long story on that. A couple pinups at the end. And then we get the Uncanny X-Men 95 annual. Nice wraparound cover here as well. They really went all out on the artwork during this time. I mean, look at this, man. Another double page spread opening up the Cannonball story. That's right. So Brian Hitch is the penciler with Bob McLeod ink, written by Terry Kavanagh. Great double page spread of them in action here with Cannonball. So this is a story of Cannonball with his sister Husk. And you have these Trask kind of robots, these Nimrods that the X-Men face. At the end of this was this cool X-Men timelines, the figured pencils by Gary Frank, John Dell inks. So it goes through Archangel and it kind of gives his quick timeline. You get one on Beast, Storm, Rogue, and Mystique is the last one. And then we get into X-Men 46 with the X-Babies, nice giant-size X-Men 1 homage. So I read this, and I kind of felt like, or before I read it, I was like, man, I'm not going to like this. X-Babies? What is this X-Babies? But it starts off, really the X-Babies only show up at the end of this issue. It's Gambit and Bishop. Bishop knows from the future that Gambit is the X-Men who betrays the X-Men team, leading to them being killed at the hands of Apocalypse. So he doesn't trust Gambit. And they have that conversation in here as well. And then you have this page as well. So fans of Iceman, in the pages of, what was it, All New X-Men, they make Iceman come out as gay. And it's kind of referenced this interaction right here, where it really seems like Bobby Drake, he's coming out to Jean Grey. But he doesn't end up doing it. They end up getting interrupted by, you have these voices inside of the bookshelf. So I was reading this issue. Again, it's about X-Babies. You have this great interaction between Gambit and Bishop. You've got this page, which I'm like, oh man, hold on, wait a minute. What is Bobby Drake saying to Jean Grey right now? And then they kind of leave it alone, but they revisit that later on. So I don't know, I just thought that was interesting. So here's the page that I shared on my Instagram story. So Gambit saying, after all this time, you still think I'm the one who betrays the X-Men? Bishop takes a little pause, looks at him and just says, yes. But he does say, I have seen many things that I thought to be truths, which have shattered. If I felt you were ultimately responsible for the end of the X-Men, I would have had you killed long ago. So I'm reading this and I'm like, oh man, yeah, that's right. This is the X-Babies thing. So X-Babies are from the Mojoverse, and they reference the death of Mojo, which happens in like X-Men 11. And they end up coming again into the story later on in the issue. But I remember being like, man, this was like a powerful issue. And then it's X-Babies. This video is brought to you by Paraz Entertainment. MegaCon is right around the corner, February 6th, and we have a Dream Killers 1 drop featuring an absolute Batman 1 homage. There's 5 different trims on this. They're going to be dropped live on Whatnot during the convention. Make sure to follow That Spider-Man booth on Whatnot and bookmark their upcoming shows. So anyway, so then you have X-Men 47. It continues this X-Baby story. They're baby X-Men. They're from the Mojoverse. You have the 2 villains that show up. That's the threat here. And Gambit and Bishop have to work together, even though there's trust issues. All right, on to the Joseph stuff. So Uncanny X-Men 327. We know that Colossus brought Magneto from somewhere after the events of Age of Apocalypse. He ends up in this area. They don't speak English. And he can't remember who he is or anything. And once he looks in the mirror, he realizes that he actually is in his mid-20s. He doesn't remember his name. They call him Joseph, and is basically just Magneto, kind of with all of his sins washed away in this village, figures out he has powers, which obviously exposes that he's a mutant. Again, we're in this era where mutants are hated and feared by the humans. So obviously it doesn't work out with him in this village, but it was a great little Magneto story. Then we get X-Men Unlimited issue 9. Again, another long X-Men issue. Some gratuitous Psylocke in a bathing suit. Double page spread art. Larry Hama writing this one. You got Vel Semix as the penciler. Bob McLeod as the inker. Yeah, so this whole pirate ship is basically supposed to be a pirate issue with this villain Bloodscream and these ghost ships. And they end up on this kind of Bermuda Triangle island. All right, Uncanny X-Men 328. Now we're getting into the Sabertooth stuff. Sabertooth is found to be unrehabilitatable Professor X fails. He gives up. He turns Sabertooth over to the United States government because there's no redemption for him. His mind is pure hate and pure feral. He only sees humans as meat. He has no empathy or compassion for human life. And he triggers Boom Boom, kind of like what Loki tries to do to Black Widow in the Avengers movie, gets her to detonate and set him free. So Sabertooth, this feral, murderous beast, he gets set free at the end of this issue. He guts Psylocke and seemingly kills her, which leads into the Red Zone. This was another wraparound chromium cover. Man, you gotta love the 90s. And this is a story of Sabertooth on the run, Fabian Nicieza with Gary Frank on the pencils, John Holdredge on the inks. Caliban is kind of the bloodhound trying to hunt down Sabertooth, but Sabertooth quickly dispatches of him. Just a great, fun issue. Iceman going crazy. Iceman has a nice conversation with Jean Grey in here where he assumes that she can read everyone's mind all at once. I think it's in that page where he's kind of trying to come out to her, but she kind of mentions to him, like, hey, you're not iced out all the time. You dampen your powers oftentimes to even look human and sometimes not to your full extent. And I do the same thing. Like, I'm not constantly hearing everyone's mind. I can kind of turn my mutant power on and off. So that was kind of a cool little explanation on Jean Grey's powers. Sabertooth looking crazy. Again, a lot of great beast interaction. Ooh, and then the Archangel, man. Sabertooth gashes at his wings, drinks his blood, telling him it tastes thinner and it different than last time, weaker. Iceman blasts Archangel to save him from falling, and almost like in a crucifixion type of image. This was kind of cool too, showing Archangel crash into the water tower and then flow in the water off the side of this building, which is what Iceman freezes. So great issue with that Sabertooth Red Zone. And then it ends off with the Starjammers 4-issue miniseries written by Warren Ellis. And guys, I got to be honest, I thought these issues were extremely boring. Carlos Pacheco on the pencils, Cam Smith on the ink. I kept reading them to think, like, okay, where's this going to tie in with the X-Men issues? Where's this going to tie in with Onslaught coming? And it just doesn't at all, man. I don't know why this is included unless this plays a bigger role in the main story that I don't remember. I didn't even remember that it was in the beginning of the X-Men Prime issue until I just flipped through it again. But I just feel like it doesn't tie in at all. Again, maybe it'll tie in with something in Volume 2 that matters. I don't really recall them having a big presence in the Onslaught main story, but it's been some years since I read that as well. So kind of ends on a low point with this omnibus with that. But otherwise, man, I really dug all the issues. The bonus material, a lot of swimsuit stuff. We get the Brothers Hildebrandt, Gambit and Rogue cover here. Rest in peace. Then we have some more swimsuit stuff. You've got Psylocke and Wolverine. You've got Kitty Pryde with Storm, Colossus on the surfboard. Rick Leonardi. Big fan of Rick Leonardi. Underrated. Iceman doing his Marvel swimsuit special by Joe Phillips. Brothers Hildebrandt again with Cyclops and Phoenix or Jean Grey. You got another Psylocke. You got Bishop with his Speedo on. Loved these Fleer Ultra X-Men 95 Spring Break trading cards. I always remember Wolverine with the sausage. Iceman's super hot, making the ice cubes in his drink. Love those cards. I love it when they include the page of cards here. Then we have a Hot Shot cover by Igor Cordy. I guess this was like a trade paperback. Another Hot Shot pinup by Tony Harris. More of these Hot Shots. X-Men Poster Magazine number 4 by Larry Stroman. Carlos Pacheco, Angel, and Magneto. But look at this by Greg Hildebrandt. This Gambit poster is awesome, man. It's like a movie poster. Got some Joe Mad stuff. Starjammers. Original art for X-Men 45 page. The Joe Mad Wizard wraparound cover. Awesome. I like the kind of contrasting, similar yet different X-Men and Juggernaut, Magneto, and Sabertooth. Another Wizard cover by Bart Sears. 95 Overstreet Price Guide. by John Romita Jr. We looked at these pages already. Fold-out posters. The Tim Sale Victims Trade paperback cover. Here's the second printing cover, also Tim Sale. You got some X-Men First covers. Road to Onslaught trade paperback has a recolored version of that panel with Juggernaut on his back, and just some more trade paperback covers. All right, so what do we think? Well, first of all, it's the mid-90s, and it's X-Men. You got art by Andy Kubert, Joe Mad. You've got writers like Fabian Nicieza, Scott Lobdell. Can you just pick this up having not read anything else? Sure, it'll be pretty enjoyable, but I think this is really for collectors who want to collect every issue of Uncanny X-Men and the adjectiveless X-Men in omnibus format, and this is what this does. Like the title suggests, it's the road to, it's the bridge between the Age of Apocalypse and Onslaught. So I think for those collectors, it's a must-have. You could just pick it up for the art, for the 90s nostalgia, and jump right into it. It's not really a hard recommend, but I did enjoy reading The Road to Onslaught. What do you guys think about this Omni? Let me know in the comments down below, and thank you for watching. Stay minty fresh. Peace.